Hello, everyone. Been thinking a lot lately about electric vehicles and some things that could happen that would make them more a common type vehicle than they are. Right now, all the models of electric vehicles are generally priced too high for most common people to buy. And if they're only for rich people, they're never going to be widely accepted. I know some states have passed laws saying by a certain year they want all vehicles to be electric or not. Well, to that point, in order to make electric cars more something for common people, we have to look at a few facts of them. The current electric car that has the longest range, and that's a big problem, is the range they can drive, is the Lucid Air Dream. What I just saw online said it can go 520 miles between charges. That's That's not too bad, but the problem is it's $169,000 car. Um, and a lot of the current models, the newer ones, the range they can go is about between 300 to 400 miles. Now, with that kind of range, it's not very far before you have to charge again. And they say quick charging is not real good on your batteries and about batteries. The cost to replace batteries in electric vehicles is kind of high. So you're talking anywhere from $2,500 to about $20,000 for some cars. Now, if you're going to have a commonly bought car for everybody to buy, it's going to have to be cheaper overall to begin with. You know, 40, 50, 60, $70,000 cars are just too expensive for most everybody to buy these days. So let's talk about ways they can make them a little cheaper to own and more likely that people will want to buy electric cars in the future, in the near future. Because for one thing, battery cost. Like I said, $2,500 is some of the cheaper ones. Well, someone could come up with a way to make a battery for a car that used several banks. So when the bank went bad, needed to be replaced, you could pull one bank out and the battery bank would be $150 or something. And it might require 8 or 12 banks to do this to make it that way. You replace them as they need done when they go bad. That would help. Because the battery itself, if it's more than $500 to replace a battery when needed, most people ain't going to want to buy them because it's just too expensive. Now, for range, they can come up with some kind of alternator type system that charges some of these banks in the battery and uses a certain number, say it's a 12 bank battery in the car, and it uses 8 of them at any one time, with the lowest one being charged by some kind of alternator system while you're driving down the road, and it switches between the banks as one gets low and one's fully charged to where it can increase your range. That would be a great help. Another great help would be if solar panel systems could be developed that are a lot more efficient than what we have today. If you could find a solar panel system that didn't cost more to make, that could produce 10 times, 50 times, maybe 100 times the electric that a current solar panel can do, you could feasibly put a small solar panel on the roof of your vehicle while you're driving that would collect energy and run some of your electrical systems to take the load off the battery so that they would not die as quick. That would allow you to drive much farther on your car's battery charge than having to stop and recharge every 300 or 400 miles. Uh, so those two things would be a great plus. Now, the other thing, if it was a multi-bank type battery system where each bank could be taken out buy it and replaced at a repair shop for a nominal fee where it wasn't real expensive per bank. That bank turned in and some chemicals put on it and stuff and make it like new, for recycling purposes, to where they're not throwaway. Because the batteries just throw away at the end of its life. You're not really helping the situation, you know. Now the other problem is charging your battery system. If you have to charge your battery overnight, and a lot of people have electric cars, it's going to strain the grid. So the electrical grid's going to have to be updated a lot before we can really adopt electric cars for everybody. Now you may be wondering, why do I have a big pile of silver on the table while I'm talking about electric cars? Well, it's a common fact that electric cars will use silver as part of the component they will need in the system. They'll probably have more wiring than a standard car does, and that'll be more copper and wire in, soldered together wire using silver solder, possibly. And silver is a great conductor of electricity and a good heat conductor. But all that together, you still need, for an electric vehicle to be really something everybody will want, it has to be cheaper than they are today. Right now, most electric cars, around town, I see several people driving Teslas. In fact, one of the department stores has a big bank where there's like 7 or 8 Tesla car chargers there. Now, I did talk to somebody once, and they told me that it costs about $15 to charge their Tesla up, and they expect to drive about 400 miles on that $15. But, if your electric vehicle versus gas-powered engines, the thing about gas-powered engines is, you have to have oil, you have to have all kinds of fluid, you have to change the oil all the time, you have to buy gas all the time. If you can make some kind of system on your electric car where you're driving down the road and it's producing electricity while you're driving that helps run your car and takes a lot of the load off the battery, then you're going to have a much longer range on a vehicle. If they can come up with something like that, some kind of system that allows the car to charge while it's driving, your limitation might only be, instead of 300 or 400 miles, it might be 1,000. If you can drive 1,000 miles on an electrical charged car, that would be the kind of car people would probably want, because you could do a road trip on it, get where you're going, charge it up there while you're doing stuff, and then drive it back home off 2 charges, maybe. Fully charged when you leave, and then recharge where you get where you're going to come back. If you could do that, you drive 1,000 miles on an electrical charge, didn't have to stop except for other reasons, to eat and whatever. That would probably make your electric car a lot more feasible in the near future. Right now, like I said, in the next 3 or 4 years, it's unlikely that most people will be able to buy electrical vehicles, because Teslas are just too expensive, and most of the other ones, I looked at the prices, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 car, most people can't afford that. And if you're making anywhere from minimum wage up to about $20 an hour, you're not going to be able to afford that either. Hello, AG Stacker, 1776. Just talking about electric cars and how things that need to happen for us to adapt them, adopt them, and have more people have them. They got to be cheaper than they are right now. And silver will figure in to electric cars, because silver and copper and other metals, because they use it for wiring, and there would be more wiring in an electric vehicle than what a standard gas power engine would have. But those are some of my thought processes of stuff that has to happen. Your battery's got to be cheaper, and your range has to be longer, and the overall cost of the car has got to be less. Because if the car costs $80,000, $90,000, we're not buying it. In general, the United States, the general public, they're not going to be able to buy that. Now, richer people, millionaires, they can buy anything they want. And if you're making like, I don't know, say $300,000 or $400,000 a year, you can probably buy a Tesla. But if you're making 30, 40,000 a year, you're not going to be able to buy a Tesla, not pay your rent or mortgage, and buy food and live. You can't buy a Tesla. It's just $70,000, $80,000 car. The cheaper models, it's just too much. So these were all my ideas about things that need to happen that's going to make electric cars something that people would actually want to buy and use. I don't want to go on about this too much other than say I don't want to talk about the politics behind electric cars and stuff, because that just causes arguments. I'm just saying that if you can bring down the price of the battery and you can adapt some kind of alternator charger system that charges up your batteries while you're going down the road, you'll go a long way towards people wanting to get them, because if you can get an electric vehicle, you can, for $20,000 to $30,000, you can drive 1,000 miles in it. And the battery replacement is not very expensive, and I think people would want to buy them at that point. I do think that whenever we get to the point where they're economically feasible for the country, for everybody to buy them, the use of gas versus electric is going to go like this, crisscross. Right now, way more gas cars than electric. But once electric gets cheap enough to buy and the range is high enough, I think it's going to go like this. Gas is just going to drop off real quick, and electric's going to rise real quick. But until the battery is a lot cheaper and the range is a lot longer and the overall cost of the car is cheaper, common people ain't going to be able to buy them. And if common people can't buy the car, then it won't be widely used. But that's pretty much all I have to say about this. I'm going to leave this up and see what happens. People might or might not watch it, and they may or may not agree with some of the stuff I said. That's fine. But silver will come into play, demand for silver like this for the vehicle, plus demand for this copper. I think this is a full copper penny from Barbados. Even if it ain't, I've got a U.S. copper penny over here, at least one. Here we go. This is a 77. It's a copper penny. But demand for and use of copper and silver will grow rapidly once electric vehicles become more commonplace. And anyway, I'm going to go ahead and pull this down for the night and wish you all a good night.